It was just a normal day in Metropolis suburbs when Krypto was in the backyard of the home he was staying. He was just looking at the sky and he was just thinking about something that he was actually thinking out about the leader of the dog, about the patrol, about this dog star patrol, Brainy. Krypto had been in love with Brainy ever since he saw her for the very first time. But it took him almost about a few weeks to realize about his crush for Brainy. Despite that she was the leader of the patrol, Krypto has been along with her friends, had to help around in town when if they were needed. But there hasn't been any crime for at least for a couple of days. So even the Krypto hopes that maybe he wanted to be able to tell Brainy how he feels for her. But at the same time, he wasn't even sure if Brainy was even like him the same way because who knew? There hasn't been anyone who knew about this except for Terrier, who's the only one who's aware about this that Krypto had feelings for Brainy. Even though that Tail Terrier had told Krypto, you may best to tell her, or otherwise because who knows if anyone else may take her as attractive and even being with her. Even though the tale has a point. But every time Krypto was going about to tell her when he arrived to the base, otherwise just before when she had this breathing moment when she informs the other one of what's happening, what type of criminals on the loose and how they had which one is about to go in, how they were able to help the others to stop this criminal to be taking place. Even though that he knows that Brady has ability to read minds, but he had made a vow or like a promise to himself not to read the minds of her team members without asking them. Because that if she did, it was like breaking their privacy without even realizing it. Even though that would have be if if he had managed to tell her, who knows what would have happened. But even though that tail terrier had a point that he probably should tell her, at least at some point, but Krypto had no idea exactly when or how. But one day, after Krypto and Tail Terrier and among others had stopped one of those enemies, Krypto returned back to the base, and even though that Krypto was not even alone, Brainy was there, as always, and even Mammoth Mutt was also there. They were talking about something, and when they saw that Krypto was still at the base, Brainy asked why he remained there. He could just go home. And even though that he wanted to say that he wanted to talk to her about something, and he said, "All right, see you next time then," and he went home. On his way back to Kevin's home, he had no idea if he were able to be able to stop, to be able to tell anyone, or especially Brainy, about his true feelings for her. But what he didn't know, it would happen soon enough. Because only shortly, sometimes later on there, Making Cats and his minions actually attacked the city, and Brainy was among the only few that were able to get there in time. And after she managed to reach out to other members like Krypto and of course Mammoth Mutt, they managed to stop their enemy from doing so much harm. But just before then, after the match to being defeated, or defeated the enemy, Brainy and the others went back to the base. When the others had left, except for Brainy and Krypto, Krypto realized this was the moment he had to take. Because he doesn't even know if he would have had another opportunity to telling her. As he was walking up to her, he cleared his throat and asked if they could talk. And she said yes. And he wanted to tell her something. And she was a little bit curious to know what it could have been. Even though at first, he couldn't even bring out the right words how to telling her. But when he said that he liked her more than anything, that he had a crush on her, and he wished to be with her if she would have even liked to go out with him or something. But before she could answer, he actually just ran away from the base and ran back home. Even though he felt very, very nervous about this, and he even felt some sort of remorse. He told himself, he even told himself, I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have done it at all. She did not worth me at all. Despite this, even though that actually meant saying that to himself, he didn't even see Brainy or any others for a couple of days, except for Tail Terrier. He actually saw him, and even though when he asked if something had happened, because he could somehow sense that Krypto was a bit nervous if about something. Despite that Krypto didn't want to be in telling exactly what happened. But after that, Tail Terrier and Bulldog managed to convince him at least try to tell. So he then said what happened. At least they thought maybe something worse had happened. But after he mentioned what he had said to Brady, both Bulldog and Tail Terrier just looked at each other and back at him and said, So you finally told her how you felt, said Bulldog. Yes, that is true, said Krypto. Even the Krypto himself was not even expecting that they probably would laughing about something about this, like his reaction to all of this, but they didn't. Because they were supportive. They even said, well, if now you had told her, and you didn't have the time to even let her to say what she if she had any feelings for you at all. You just run away besides not only being able to do so. Yeah, that's true. He wasn't even sure about that though. But as he returned home, there was someone waiting there. And it was in fact Brainy. And at first he managed to hide himself behind the bushes. And he thought maybe he could just sneak away from their place and maybe return later when she wasn't there. And he thought of doing so, but as he was about to step away, he managed by accident step on a twig that snapped, and she looked to turn around and saw him that in the bushes. But she didn't say anything. She just looked at him, and I realized his cover had been blown. So rather than just run away, he stepped out from the bushes and to his up to her, even though she didn't say anything. But except for one word, a few words, he said true. And but before he could say anything, she did read his mind by, of course, by his permission, and she realized it was actually the truth. Krypto had a strong feelings for her and has been released for the time being, but hasn't been able to tell her or too nervous to be able. She stood there silently, and if for that silence, Krypto thought maybe this could have been a bad sign, saying that maybe she only liked him as a friend and wouldn't date him. But after this only this only brief moment of silence, she did actually manage to say that she would date him because he is a very good friend to the others, a very good team member. He always worked out and always put others himself before others. And that ever since that ever since they first met, she was very interested in him, knowing that he was actually and also an alien dog. Like he was actually the dog that belonged to Superman. Krypto was really surprised to even hearing that, but at least he didn't have to be feeling guilty or any sort of remorse about this. So he asked her if she really meant if she wanted to go out there, and she said yes. So despite this, they decided to go out the next day to to the park nearby to have something to eat and just have a good time. And of course, when the other team members like Bulldog and Tail Terrier was told, they actually were surprised and even they that happened, but they were just supportive. But like even like the rest of the team members, they were actually very supportive. Even though after several times so they have been dating for the next couple of weeks, things between Brainy and Krypto turn out to be working as much better than they expected. Because even though that the Krypto himself was not even sure if this relationship would even last particularly long, because despite he has strong feelings for her, he wasn't even sure if it's going to be a long-term relationship or maybe last for only a couple of days. But even after the third and fourth date with her, he realized she actually loved him also, because after the third date, she admits to him that she was even also very not even convinced herself if this could have been any solid relationship. But after a while, they were actually very connected. And even despite having so much to get together, they are actually very happy to be with someone like themselves. It happened. In fact, it happened that, well, most of that time, and even during when they were supposed to be on a date, Mechany Cat's minions and himself appeared inside in the city during an attack. And even though they had to be they were on a date, but even though Krypto said maybe this date will be proposed hold for Lisa for a moment until this problem taken care of. And she smiled and agreed, and they managed to summon the rest of the crew, the rest of her team members, and they stopped the enemy from me once again. But what they were, despite all of this happening, Krypto sometimes can be sitting in his backyard after all this happened and wondering what will the future be for him like? If they would still be together in the future and even have families like that. Even though he had told his owner, or at least temporarily owner, Kevin, of what was happening. He was actually surprised even that Krypto had found a girlfriend, and especially was Brainy. But despite that, he was really actually very supportive to his friend Dolores. But there was something that was going to happen. Because during a battle, or at least a fight, against Mechanic Cats and his bad minions attacking the city a couple of weeks later, something would happen. During the fight, Brainy got hurt It wasn't a bit seriously hurt, but it was hurt enough. And even though despite the other members like Bulldog and Mammoth Mutt managed with Krypto stop their enemy from doing any serious harm and run them away, they fought and even believed that Brainy was seriously hurt. So they all together took her back to the base to be, well, make sure that she wasn't even seriously injured. But luckily, she wasn't. She only had some bruises and well, some bruises for the most part. And Krypto actually carried her on his back all the way back to the base. And she was really supportive and he was very happy that he did that. And not only because he cared about her, he loves her more than anything. He had even told her that he would do anything to save her, even that means sacrifice himself. And even only about some time later on, when Krypto, the others were in a fight, Mechanic Cat had something special for Krypto. He somehow had managed to gather, or at least found, a piece of a green kryptonite, and he held it in front of Krypto. And Krypto, unlike his owner, Superman, was weak. He had the same weakness as Superman. The others saw what was happening and they tried to stop him, but his Mechanic Cat's minions prevented that from even happening. They tried to stop them from occupying from somewhere else. But Brainy, she could not stand to see her own boyfriend getting hurt by their own enemy. As she used her ability to read minds and even to make an image of herself around a different location to make the minions confused. And after that, they were confused for a brief moment. Mammoth Mutt managed to breathe out, managed to inflate herself as like a ball and bounced on the others. And Brainy, like the other friends, managed to knock down every single minion. And they all ran up towards Mechanic Hat to stop him from doing this any further happened. Despite that, he managed to escape, but he placed the kryptonite on top of Krypto, and he was so weak he could barely move. And even though despite he wouldn't even die from it, but he was really very weak. Brainy managed to remove the kryptonite and place it in some sort of box to block out the radiation or at least the shining rays that was emitted from the kryptonite. After that was gone, Krypto slowly started regain his power again. But still, it would take him at least a couple of hours before recovered from that. Even after all this battle against the enemy, Krypto told the others that he will be taking an off leave from the fighting for at least a day so that he can recover. And the others thought maybe that was for the best, but they could actually take care of the problems if something happened. And even though that later that same day, Brainy went to see Krypto just to see how he was feeling. He said that he was a bit tired, but there were some effects were happening when you were having, well, at least part of the kryptonite. Even despite happening, even after what happened, Krypto admits to Brainy that he thought maybe that was done for him, and he would do anything to save her if it was in her position. And for that, she cried a bit and said that she understands that. And from that moment, they actually realized they were meant to be with each other, even despite having so much love for each other. Even then, even after some this meeting and when they had this talk, Crypto realized he actually did want to be with her forever. So after a couple of days of having full rest, he talked to Tail Terrier, Bulldog, and even Mammoth Mutt that he wanted to propose to Brainy. Everyone was really a bit surprised about that, but they were actually supported the idea. After all, they could see how both of them were happy to be together. So when Brainy was told by, at least from Krypto, when he proposed to her, she said yes immediately. Despite that, they actually decided to invite every their friends to the park to have a small wedding, including Kevin and Andrea. Andrea and even Kevin were close friends, but they were actually happy to see that Krypto was getting married. And despite that, they knew that they would not be able to go on a long term, long week honeymoon like the most humans do, but they decided to spend maybe the outside of town for maybe a day or two, and they've always had in reach, being contacted by the team if they need any help. They actually stayed at this place near a small lake just outside of town for about a day though, and despite it was only for one day, it was a perfect time for both to be on their honeymoon. And not only that, after 4 years of being married, Crypto and Brady actually announced to their friends that they were expecting a baby soon, or at least a puppy. And all their friends could not have been even more excited. Despite this, they decided they hadn't even decided for what name to give their puppy. But if it was a boy, they would name it Jason. And if it was a girl, they would name her Molly. And then after that, they after several of the months, the baby was born. And it turned out they had a son, which they named Jason. Even for Jason, he actually had inherited both some of the powers from both his parents, like especially from his father Krypto, the able of flight and heat, vision, X-ray, strength, like a Kryptonian dog would have on the red or yellow sun, and also had the same ability as his mother to read minds. But what's one different thing about Jason? He wasn't even born with the same weakness as, at least, from the Kryptonites. Because when he was young, he was actually exposed to green kryptonite. But since he was only half kryptonite, krypton dog, he was actually wasn't feeling the same effects from as his own father would, which is a good sign. Because if that happened, if it was later on, he could actually be able to help his family and the team, and without being suffering from this side effect from green kryptonite. Like his dog, like his dad, Krypto actually wanted to help around this, and he actually Jason helped around with his father different places on different missions when he was a bit older. Even despite Brainy wouldn't be very much happy about this. But Krypto had managed to convince her that this was the best way for their son to be learning how to be a hero. And also in order to control his powers, because if they had even trained him, it would have been a disaster or a lot of chaos. And especially with his Kryptonian powers, when he's a half Kryptonian, and she agreed. But when Jason was about maybe almost 6 to 5 years old, is a full grown dog, he was actually admitted to be part of the Dog Star Patrol. And like his parents, they were proud to see their son be part of the patrol like themselves. And though, despite that, Krypto was really happy that his son was very eager to be part of it. And only a couple of years later, Jason actually married a daughter to Mammoth Mutt. And he loved that her daughter, and he was, even though the support from both Krypto and Brainy, it was just amazing. And this is how Brainy and Krypto found a true love, got a family together. The end.